Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Rich Ruiz, and I am the captain for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Special Victims Bureau. Today, Sergeant Joe Ramos will be presenting a case involving a serial rapist in Los Angeles that is in custody. I want to acknowledge the partnership between our department, the Los Angeles Police Department, and the Inglewood Police Department in investigating this case. In order to stay focused, Sergeant Ramos will present the case in English and in Spanish. After both presentations, we will take questions. Please be aware that the case is ongoing, and to protect the integrity of the case, we will only be able to provide limited information. The suspect's name and photograph are to my right. Sergeant Joe Ramos.
Thank you, Captain Reese, for this presentation. First of all, I'm going to lay out a timeline. First of all, my name is Joe Ramos. I'm a sergeant of the Special Victims assigned to the South Team. At first, I'm going to lay out a timeline how this incident unveiled. We, the Special Victims Bureau, became aware of this incident on February 2nd. This is when the deputies from the Walnut Station received a 911 call of two females in distress that were assaulted and robbed at the 15700 100 block of Colima Road in the unincorporated area of City of Walnut. When the deputies arrived there, they spoke with two females who said that an unidentified male black entered the location, displayed a firearm, then proceeded to sexually assault one of the adult females. At the conclusion of the assault, the male took the victim's cell phone and at pistol point demanded their username and password to their phone. It was unclear why he did that, but that's all we had at the time. As this investigation continued, we were alerted through a DNA hit with our partners with LAPD that we had a pattern of this type of crime. So it appears that this individual, like my captain has mentioned, was committing these crimes in several jurisdictions throughout Southern California, i.e., we were first alerted by the Inglewood PD that they had a similar CODIS hit matching a DNA hit. From there, they went to Los Angeles, West Hollywood. That's when we determined that we had a predator in our midst, and once we got him identified, we proceeded to get a search warrant for his arrest. At that time, it took a while because he was eluding us. We're not sure how he became aware that we were following or aware of this incident. However, we utilized our Major Crimes Bureau surveillance team to apprehend the suspect. He was taken into custody in November 8th in the area of Lancaster. He was booked and is currently in our custody. He is in our custody. I believe his bail is $1.7 million. The district attorney, since then this case has been presented, we're looking at a total of 13 victims. 4 are female. 4 of them are minors. And we have several, approximately right now, we have 16 felonies against this suspect. And this case is currently ongoing. His next court date is going to be January 12th in the city of Compton, where this case will be continued. At this time, I'm willing to take any questions you have. Yes, ma'am.
How old is he? Where is he from? Tell us a little bit about his background and where he committed his crime.
During our investigation, it was determined that this person, Mr. Watson, he's about 20-ish, was using social media. His platform of choice was Instagram and Snapchat. And he was very savvy to elude the victims in meeting them. And he would use different means. At that point, we thought we were having an issue, and these victims could be maybe human trafficking victims. But it appears that this person had alternative motives for these victims. What he did do, once he stole the cell phones of all these victims, he was able to assume their identity, reach out to the victims' contacts, and continued his tirade of sexually assaulting other victims through the use of these cell phones he obtained from every victim he dealt with. So he was very savvy.
So he assaulted victims of the victims, or friends of the victims?
Yes, and it ranged from extortion to robberies, but every time he left a scene of an incident, he took the victim's cell phones at pistol point, forced them to give up their username and password of these platforms, and it just spiraled into additional victims throughout.
Can you go ahead and go back for a moment? Tell me how many victims there were and how many felonies. Can you recall that again?
We're looking at 13 victims at this point, 4 of them being minors. And we believe that there's additional victims out there. Like I said, this suspect, Mr. Watson, was very savvy with these platforms.
So in every case, he lured the victim?
Yes.
So this has no connection to the LAPD case right now on Mulholland Drive?
No.
Sergeant Ramos, who were the victims to what? I mean, were they like sort of online dating? Or?
It is unclear at this time. It was just these victims believed that this person could make them famous on social media or just casually meeting with them. It is unclear, but he was very savvy to attract their attention, to meet and perform these acts against them.
If you can repeat the question.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
It's unclear what they were meeting for, like whether it was for a romantic relationship or whether it was for something.
Every victim had a different angle. One of them was either to become a superstar on the internet, a model. So like I said, this Mr. Watson was very savvy to, depending on who he was talking to, or if he had pictures of victims on their cell phones, of nude pictures, he would extort them. So whatever he was obtaining from every victim, he would use that information to lure them in.
So you're characterizing the pieces of information on the flyer where he would dress as a woman to lure people and victims in?
No, he was just, once he stole the one victim's contacts, he would pose as the victim and address them accordingly. So these unannounced people did not know who they were dealing with. So he was, like I said, very savvy in pursuing these angles with these. Something to that nature, but not exactly. Yes, next question.
You mentioned extortion. Can you kind of go into that a little bit more?
Well, depending on these victims, whatever they had on their files or pictures, even if they had nude pictures, he would reach out to these victims and address them. May I have nude pictures of you? Either you give me money or else I'm going to share them on social media. And some of these victims were either scared to either confront the suspect or address them, but they were victimized that way. If they did agree to the victims, meeting with the victims, they were produced either by him being holding a firearm and sexually assaulting them.
Can you go to the
Yes.
sexual assault one more time? Because I think we kind of got lost there. Did he sexually assault the first case that you talked about?
Yes, he did. Right. In that particular case, that was a straight sexual assault. But at the conclusion of the assault, he also took the cell phones from the victims and forced them at pistol point to give up their username and passwords. By obtaining their username and password, gave them access to the victims' phones that furthered his rampage to get additional victims and extort them if they had any nude pictures.
So that was the case that sort of got the ball.
Yes.
And then you were able to pair up the MO with other cases.
Yes. Through our partnership with LAPD and our DNA hit, we started noticing that there was patterns of this suspect committing these similar crimes in MO.
What about priors?
He has an extensive criminal history, but I'm not going to go into that.
Is similar or violently?
Yeah, he had just similar extensive criminal history, robberies, sexual assaults as well.
What are the age range of the victims?
I can't really go into detail. I mean, the majority were adults, and 4 of those victims were minors.
How many of these cases were, as you described, you that one case, the first case? Did he go repeat that same assault out on the street, or did he find all his victims inside the phone?
Like I said, every victim and the information he obtained from each varied. So whatever the victims had on their cell phone, once he accosted them and demanded their username and password, were depending where he would seek to meet them, either at their residence, a public place, in a car. So his MO varied depending on the information he obtained.
Was it 13
At this point, we have 13 victims, varying from extortion, sexual assaults, robbery, and grand theft.
Okay, it's still not clear to me, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it clearly. How many of these victims were found through the phone? How many of these victims were him assaulting new people on the street?
The majority of the victims were obtained via phone and their contacts on the phone.
When did this start again?
We became aware, the Special Victims Bureau became aware of the first incident that occurred in February 2nd of 2021.
On that day, you said you received 911 calls from 2 females.
Right.
Were they both sexually assaulted together at the same place, or were these 2 separate?
They were at their residence at the time when the 911 call came in. They were at their residence, and that's where the sexual assault occurred.
At their residence?
At their residence.
So this man is normally invited to meet victims at their home.
It is unclear what was the motive of him meeting them, but he was able to entice them to meet up with them, either for sexual gratification or other means. It's very unclear, but all we could know at this time that they accepted this individual to go inside their home and to discuss whatever intentions they had at the time.
How many of the victims did he actually meet with?
All 13 of them.
Oh, all 13?
Yes.
If I may, just for clarity, so
Yeah.
involved, there were 2 women. Were both sexually assaulted or just one? My second part of the question is, of the 13 victims, how many were sexually assaulted?
The majority were, but going back to the San Gabriel Valley one, only one of the 2 were sexually assaulted.
What happened to the other one while?
She just remained there because he was holding her at gunpoint.
Just for accuracy, Sergeant, to my colleague Jeff's question, how many were actually sexually assaulted and how many was robbed?
I'd say the majority, about more than half, were sexually assaulted.
Do you have a number?
Not at this time.
February of this year, you got a hold or last?
Last year.
So, tell us about what, you say there may be other victims out there that may be afraid to come forward, you think? What should they describe for these other victims?
Well, we believe since he's very savvy using these platforms, Instagram and Snapchat, we believe that he utilized that type of ammo to lure other victims. And as you can see, in his picture, so one of the key components in this case that kind of ID'd our suspect was the fact that he had thick lips and a big smile. And we believe that if other victims see his picture, would jar their memory and would come forward to report this crime, because we would like to talk to him to further additionally charge him for these criminal acts. So that's where the angle comes, that we believe that we may be other victims.
Was he employed?
No.
No.
Was he homeless?
Excuse me?
Was he homeless?
No.
Where did he live?
You want to move on to Spanish? Or?
I'll take one last question. He lived in the South Central area, South LA. Last question.
If we may, I'd like to try to get some tips out to help people in the future, since you're a special victims, sergeant. What can we learn from this? What can women or people learn from social media contacts and interacting with someone that DMs you or whatever these may be?
Basically, it's just do your due diligence. Be careful, because people who use these platforms, pose themselves as someone who they're not, and just take their time and just do your due diligence and take extra caution when you decide to meet with someone you never met before, doing it in a public place, or the nearest sheriff station, something like that. It's just.
Someone is pretending to be your friend. How do you vet someone out?
It appeared to be.
Pretending to be their friend.
Right, especially with social media, updating your username and password, updating that, but it's also taking care of maybe your social sites, protecting them. Warn your friends and family that you've been a victim of maybe a break-in into your phone, and to alert your family and friends. That's the best advice we can give, is try to safeguard your personal identification and username and password. I meant to go to Spanish now. Okay. You know, that's it's very difficult. The only best advice I can give is check and verify, and make sure that you're dealing with the right person. Even on normal emails, it's very hard. These people who use these social media platforms are very savvy. From emails to text messages, it's just user beware and just use extreme caution when dealing with these.